We are live. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. It's another Tuesday. I'm almost saying Tuesday, it's another Friday. Oh, Tuesday is such a special day because it's the day that we have our fireside chats. But it's
Hmm.
another Friday, lunch and learn. And we are back here with my co host. I'm Dr. Janice Brooks. I'm a leadership consultant and I'm a life strategist. I shift mindset of individuals and teams so that they can navigate life with purpose. And how do I do that? By giving them the strategies to use. And with me is Dr. Siegfried Howell. He's impacting lives. He is a also a leadership consultant, a certified relationship consultant, and he's also a master life coach. And we are here today to share in this topic about adaptive leadership, the power of adaptive leadership. Dr. Howard, when I thought about the topic, power of adaptive leadership, I thought about how we were not here for a few weeks. It could be about 5, 6 weeks that we have not been in the lunch and learn. And I said that this is really adaptive leadership, because adaptive leadership is that leadership style, or that leader that has to be able to adapt to changing circumstances and changing situations. If you can't adapt, then you have not yet grasped what adaptive leadership is. And Dr. Howell, one thing I do know is that in life and in leadership, we often hear people talking about keep going, keep just going. But keep going is very good, and it's what we ought to do. But I do believe that there's a time for everything, because in adaptive leadership, we have to lead from different positions. We can lead from the front where we are all out and everyone is seeing us. But there's times when we have to lead from the side. We have to lead from the center where we are in the middle of everything and nobody is even noticing us. Then there's a time when we have to lead from the back. And then there's a time when we actually come back front and center to lead. And that is the essence of adaptive leadership, which is what we want to talk about today. I also want to say, Dr. Howell, that, and my audience, that adaptive leadership is actually a mindset shift, because it is that type of leadership that really allows us to address complex problems, and not just to address complex problems, but we want to ensure that there is long-term resilience in our teams when we use this type of leadership. So, Dr. Howell, when you think about adaptive leadership, what comes to mind for you?
I think of a leader who is good in 1 to 2 areas. He's expert in one area, but he is above average in multiple different areas. Because what I'm thinking of is, for example, we're all given strengths. So let's say you're a transformational leader. The thing about transformational leaders is that that type of leadership takes a lot of time, and it takes the willingness of the people that you're trying to transform in order to come along. If they don't trust you, if you don't have a relationship with them, then they do not want to come on that journey with you. And then I think of the laissez-faire leader, who a lot of people don't like that type of leadership. However, if you are a leader surrounded by experts in their fields and you do not know the content that they know, but they're highly motivated, then you need to be a hands-off type leader, where you give them their directives, you give them the direction that they're going in, and then you step back and you let them do what they do. Because jumping in, giving your ideas might slow down the process, because they are the experts. You are just the captain on the ship. And so, and then I think about the democratic leadership. Sometimes you need to be a leader that is autocratic, where you're telling people this is what needs to be done. And this is primarily good for people who are not experts, for people who are standing there waiting to hear the direction that they need to go in, or for new hires. If you're a new hire and you don't know the organization, you need an autocratic leader to tell you what needs to be done, what direction we're going in. And then once people become experts, then you can step back and direct from the side, or direct from within the pack, or direct from the back, where you're looking at what is going on and saying, okay, based on what I see, Susie needs to push in this direction. I need to help transform Mike in this particular area. And so you're looking on from the sidelines or from the back, seeing if they're going in the direction that they need to be going in. And so what I see as an adaptive leader is one who is good in one area, but knows that that particular area is not good for all types of situations. And they're willing to take the information and adapt their leadership styles, even to a style that they may not be comfortable with, so that they can get the outlined goal achieved.
Wow, that is such a deep explanation, Dr. Howell, and it's so critical. You said they're good or excellent in at least two areas, but they do know other areas. And when I think about that, I look at people like in the armed forces, like leaders in the armed forces, in the aviation industry, even people in the firefighting industry where they do that kind of job. And it also leads me to think of people like in the financial sector, where they are expert at one thing, but they can lead in many other areas. And I think about people in the army because they are so trained that even though this is their experience area that they're most experienced in, but they can lead in other area based on how they're trained. And when I go to the biblical context of things, Dr. Howell, my first thought was on Joshua. And I have to mention a book that was written by yourself and your father, which I have right next door to me here, and it's called From Ordinary People to Great Leaders, and it's on Amazon. And I can tell you this is one of the best books I've ever read. And when I think about Joshua in the Bible, I think about how he had to pick up the reins of leadership full force when Moses died. Because I remember God said to him that Moses is dead. You have to get up and lead now. He was always leading, but he was leading on the side. But
Yes.
now he had to pull up himself and lead. And Joshua was an adaptive leader. One thing I also remember, Dr. Howell, with adaptive leaders, they know when to pause and they know when to step forward. And I think I mentioned that already because I'm thinking of Joshua again. When they got to Jordan and they were supposed to cross the Jordan River, God said, pause here for 3 days for instructions so that they can know what to do next. And when I think about adaptive leader, because I'm always turning things around in my mind and thinking of our situation today. Adaptive leaders are leaders who manage tasks sometimes, but more so, Dr. Howell, they are people centric leaders. Their focus is on building people, building collaboration, ensuring that the team is at a place where they can operate in such a way that the work goes on, what needs to be done gets done. And they thrive amidst the different changes that are happening around them. And this leads us to our next thought, Dr. Howell. Now that we have talked about what adaptive leadership is, how beneficial is this type of leadership in our changing environment? Because every day things are changing. How beneficial is this type of leadership today?
I will give you a couple of examples. I have quite a few friends and family members that are engineers, and they started out from college, right after college graduation, they started out as an engineer and they moved up in these different organizations, and they became leaders of small groups, but they hit what is called a ceiling. They could not be a leader in a larger group until they got more information in another type of leadership role. And so they had to get, so let's say they had a bachelor's in let's say mechanical engineering. They could manage smaller groups. As the newbies came in, they would give them their marching orders and direct them, but they could not be part of a full-fledged department until they got financial leadership skills. So they had to go and get their MBA because money was going to be larger and they needed to be trusted with large amounts of money. And so they had to improve their skills. And then I think of Moses when he went up and he got the 10 Commandments. When he came down, the people were down there worshiping the calf. And God said to him, listen, I want to destroy these people. And he was like, no, God, give him a second chance. Give him a chance. So he went from an autocratic leader to a nurturing leader. So sometimes you have to adapt. And then I think of Moses when he was working himself half to death trying to lead the people, and he went by and saw his father-in-law, and Jethro said, you're going to have to break these people up into smaller groups and have other people leading them so that you can release yourselves from all that stress. And so part of being an adaptive leader is knowing when to let go of some of your power and let other people take the reins, because you can wear yourself out with micromanaging.
Wow.
You can wear yourself out to the point that you are no longer effective as a leader. And so if a leader is not adaptive, especially in this day and age when technology is running so fast, you cannot be a master of every single last thing. My strength is in putting information together. My strength is making complicated stuff easy. But my limitation is technology. So I have to let other people do that for me. But as a leader, you have to keep your goal, your vision, and your mission, and then get that communicated effectively to the people under you so that they can also help you be adaptive. But if you are a micromanager, you are not an adaptive leader. You are going to be a burnt out leader, a hated leader, because nobody likes a micromanager. And eventually you slow everyone down, you kill the morale, and you're not going to get very much done. And you're going to blame it on the people, but it's actually you.
Wow. That's a potent point there, Dr. Howell. We have to be able to adapt to changing situation. One of the things I heard you say too is that learning is important for an adaptive leader. You talked about the person had to move up to get their MBA in order to be able to manage, to adapt to the different leadership position that they were in. And it reminds me of my early days in leadership. My first leadership position was leading 4 people and myself. So it was leading 5 of us. 4 and myself is 5. And I mastered that. And then I was sent to lead 13 and myself make 14. So I adapted to now leading a larger number of persons. And then I was sent to lead from 14, 40. So as we learn to adapt as a leader to changing situations, to learn and grow, to grow, not just learn and grow for ourselves, but to grow the people. Because as I said before, adaptive leadership is more about people centricity, because it's growing the people, it's changing the mindset, it's fostering things like innovation and resilience and showing people that they can have a brighter future. That's adaptive leadership. And when we are able to do that, then our leaders who are above us is able to see what we're doing and be able to move us into greater spaces. Sometimes people say, I'm in this job for 15 years or 12 years or 8 years and I can't move. Are you an adaptive leader? Are you able to adapt to changing situations? Sometimes it's looking within you, because we're talking about it all, every day. Everything that you need is all within you. Are you able to collaborate? Do you embrace continuous learning? Are you able to pave the way for others to thrive and to survive when there are unprecedented challenges? Are you able to evolve at a rapid pace? Because adaptive leaders have to be able to do all of this and more. So when we think about adaptive leadership, Dr. Howell, it's actually thinking about sustaining growth and success in the organization where you are. So when you find yourself in a position where you are not moving, this is one of the things that you think about. Am I able to adapt to the changing situations around me? Am I able to add a benefit to this organization in its changing environment? Because nothing is static, nothing stays the same. And so we recognize that these things are required to be an adaptive leader. So again, when I think about this, I'm saying, is this a situation where everything is positive? Or are there negatives to using this type of leadership, Dr. Howell? Because sometimes we can make things as leader look like this is the only way, this is the best way to do it. Adaptive leadership is the way to go all the time. But what are some of the negatives of this type of leadership?
Before I address that, let me give you two stories. The first story is Blockbuster. Netflix went to Blockbuster and said to them, hey, I want to integrate this new idea. It's called streaming. And I want you to help me I want you to help me get this platform up and running. And Blockbuster said to them, nah, we have a big market in the video, in the VHS market. We're just going to stick to VHSs. 4 years later, Blockbusters were out. Netflix was in. And so that's why adaptive leadership is so important. Now, let me take you on another journey. Let's look at places like Kmart and Walmart. There's a story about Sam Walden. When he first started, he would go at night to his competitors' stores to see what they were doing, to see what prices they had, and he would adjust accordingly. And then if he was in a store and he saw some display casings that were different that he could use in his store, he would go and find out where they got them from and implement them into his store. So he was a very adaptive leader. And so adaptation gives you innovation. Now, I say that to say this. The con of being an adaptive leader is that it is mentally exhausting. It's time consuming. You have to know when to hold and when to fold. So you cannot just be flexible at every old whim that comes your way. And so it becomes challenging because you have to use your gut to know, okay, my education is telling me I need to stay, but everyone else is telling me to go. And so if I fail at this particular task, I can't blame my team members. I, as a leader, I have to take the brunt of the blame. But then when I'm successful, I have to spread it out. So it's very lonely at the top when you're being flexible. And you might be flexible to the wrong things, because everything that looks logical is not logical on the current trends. And case in point, Blockbuster thought that sticking with VHSs was better than streaming. Kmart was bigger than Walmart at that point in time. And Kmart thought, hey, we have a formula and it works for us, so let's just stick with it. Walmart was more adaptive. Now, can you even find a Kmart in the United States? And so, you have to look at it and then look at Woolworths and look at Walgreens. Where are the Woolworths now? So you have to think of all of these things. So it's easy to say adaptive leadership is the way to go. But when do you have to be autocratic? When do you have to be transformative? And I think you have to be transformative when you are starting an organization and you're bringing new people on. You have to get them in the direction that you want them to go in. You have to be autocratic with newbies, like we said. You have to be democratic if you have a whole bunch of leaders who have equal stake in the company. So if you have partners, if there's a partner firm, if there are people who bought into your idea and put money in,
Mm.
you have to be more democratic because you want to keep that money coming. You want to keep those board members happy. And so you have to walk that thin line of all these different types of leadership. And that's the con of being an adaptive leadership.
Wow.
When to hold, when to fold, when to be
Mm.
democratic, when to be
Mm.
transformative, when to be laissez-faire. It is difficult, time consuming and exhausting, and you can burn out easily.
Wow. Wow. Those are some excellent examples. And I like how you bring in the point of these stores that we can identify with. We see
Mhm.
them everywhere. We knew when they were here, they're not here anymore, and we can identify with them. But I want to come from the concept of the team in the organization, because this adaptive leadership style, Dr. Howell, it can sometimes cause confusion among our team members.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yes, we today we say this is what we're doing, and tomorrow we change it again. And because it's an adaptive thing, the approaches and the situations are constantly changing. And sometimes this can lead to them to be frustrated. It lacks this clarity in the team, and sometimes it hinders that kind of cohesion that they would have. So you find that sometimes this can cause different cliques to form in the organization if you don't know how to manage it properly, because you can have a little group form over here that says, I am not doing that today because yesterday this is how we did it, and last year we were doing it like that. And so it can cause some amount of uncertainty among your team members, potential confusion. And then the other thing is, there can be both a risk in decision making and some kind of inconsistency when we use this adaptive type of leadership sometimes, Dr. Howell, because we encourage our people, our leaders, to be flexible in their approach when they're adaptive leaders. That's what they do. They are more flexible, and flexibility is good. Don't get me wrong, but when there is too much flexibility, sometimes there is inconsistency in decision making, and so team members are like not sure. Do I go left? Do I go right? It's like a flip flopping thing. So we have to be careful about that, how we really manage adaptive leadership, because this kind of inconsistency at time, it can take away, it can literally erode the trust that they have in their leader, and create people going in different directions. And the last one I want to mention to Dr. Howell,
Mhm.
it is the lack of accountability sometimes that can happen when there are adaptive leadership style being focused on too much, because everything in life requires a balance. So when we focus too much on this adaptive leadership style, because we're finding the solutions for changing environment, and things keep flowing around, sometimes there can be lack of accountability. Who does this? Who is responsible for that? Who does this? Who signed off on that? Where did that come from? So that accountability, because things are moving and adapting and changing, and sometimes it gets lost and the accountability is not there. And when accountability is absent, it creates a kind of culture where complacency set in, lack of responsibility, and this can really be detrimental to your team's performance and how effectively they work in the organization. So we have to be careful that we do not just say yes for adaptive leadership, yes for it, but it has to be balanced in a certain way at all times.
That is correct. That is correct.
Alrighty, so Dr. Howell, we are moving on, because I really like this topic of adaptive leadership. So what strategies or ideas can we really leave with our audience today as we come down to a half an hour mark, that says our advice? What can we leave with them today when we think about using this type of leadership? What would we tell them about adaptive leadership?
Well, the first thing that you mentioned is proper communication. You have to, as a leader, you have to clearly know where you're going before you have to be flexible. So you have to clearly know where you're going, be able to communicate that information to the people who need it the most, the people in the trenches. But you also have to give training to the people that you're giving the information to, so that they can take it and effectively maneuver through or through those nuances. Because what may be good for one department may not be good for another department, and that's where training is very important. I remember when I was a high school teacher, the principal would come in and they would say, "Oh yes, we're doing this particular thing across the board," and the science teachers would say, "Well, that's not going to work for science teachers because we have a very set curriculum from the state that we need to follow, and we have labs and other things that we need to do. It might work for math and language arts, but it's not going to work for science and math. Or it might work for science and math, but not for language arts and social studies, or language arts and Spanish and stuff." And we had to communicate that to the leadership. And a lot of times the leaders didn't want to hear it because they want consistency across the board. But some of your ideas are not transferable to all levels of the organization. And so you have to be flexible enough to know when people voice a concern, you either train them and show them how it can be integrated and give them time to integrate it, or be flexible enough to know that it's not going to work for that particular department or a couple of departments. And then you have to remember that there are people who have been in that organization for a long period of time, and they have gotten used to doing things a certain way. So you're going to have to kind of show them how your way is going to be beneficial to them so that they can buy into it. Because if you don't have buy-in by the majority, then you're taking a stroll because you don't have anybody following you. So if no one is following you, you're just taking a walk. You know, a leader is only a leader when people are following. And so another thing you have to look at is, do we have a supportive culture? So some departments, it's going to be more difficult for them to follow a leader, like you said, that is going left and right based on the the landscape of the technology at that point in time. If you're technology driven, or if you are driven by ideas and principles, if there's a new idea and principle and you see how it can be effective in your company, then show people how they can incorporate it and have a culture where you hold people's hands until they feel comfortable with leaving their own ways, their old ways, and then show them how the old ways can be integrated into a new way. So you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. How can I help you integrate what I'm trying to say into what you currently do, so that we can take small steps towards the pathway that I'm trying to take you on? So leadership is not just about getting your point across. It's about creating a culture, creating the training, creating the time frame for people to get used to what you're trying to do so that they can go with you in a trustful manner.
Wow. Wow. What I hear you saying, Dr. Howell, is to the point that I was going to make. I am hear you saying, you go first. Leaders, you go first. In whatever you're doing, you go first so that others can come with you. Because leadership is about going before, or whether you're leading from behind, sideways, wherever, but you go first. And that is the first step, I would say. And in everything, Dr. Howell, whether it is success or failure, everything rises and falls on leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership. And what I want to leave here today is that adaptive leaders, they can be both leaders and they can be managers at times. Because when you're an adaptive leader, you have to also step in the shoe of manager. You can't just say, I am a leader and this is where I'm standing. Sometimes you have to manage too. And when I say manage too, It's simply that sometimes you have to take over some task and delegate them. And it's about developing a team, a capable team. It's also about fostering that emotional intelligence where your team can be at a place where they can manage by themselves. You talk about earlier about the micromanagement part of things. When they are emotional intelligent, then they are able to manage at a certain point because you started with them first, but you are not going to continue to be there in everything with them. You're able to let them go and allow them to do the thing for themselves. And last but not least, I want to say value people. Value people. Take on that people centric approach that will empower your employees to take ownership of their own work, and not just to take ownership but to think creatively and to work toward common goals. Because many times, as I'm coming back to the micromanagement, because many times we stand in the way of them being creative, of them working towards their goals. And it has to be an environment of trust and collaboration. Those two are big. Trust. I'm not going with you, Dr. Howell, if I don't trust you. I'm going to stand on the sideline and watch you because I'm not sure if when I get into the middle, you are going to walk away and leave me. So that culture of trust is so important. And I want to also add this that is many times absent is inspiring people to become that person that they want to be, and also to become this active agent of change rather than just passively following things and getting them done. Inspiration is needed. And when I say needed, it is vastly needed in many organizations. We talk about motivation at time, but motivation wears away. You say something or you do something and the person is motivated, but tomorrow it wears away. But when you continue to inspire your team to become this active agent of change and the things that need to be done, they step away from being passive followers of the directives that they get, and they're actively involved in everything. And that is where you want to get your team to as active, adaptive, as an adaptive leader. And the final thing I want to say, which is where I actually started, is that adaptive leadership is actually a mindset shift. It is actually a mindset shift because it shifts you from your normal course of thinking to be able to address kind of complex problems. And many times you have to drive innovation. As you talk about these stores, we talk about technology innovation and more so long-term resilience, because you talked about Walmart, and Walmart may not be many of us favorite stores because it's not mine, but they have been able to manage, be resilient over the long term so that they can keep going. So all of this, Dr. Howell, sits in the cusp of being that adaptive leader. Your final words, because we're over time.
Yes, I will be quick and succinct in my final words. One of the things that I mentioned quite a bit is the leadership side of the company. But I want to just piggyback on what you said. A leader must also know the goals of their individual people, because to inspire people, you need to know what triggers them towards excellence, what triggers them towards transformation. So if you're not in tune with the people below you, your subordinates, then it is hard to distill change and to create an environment where people want to follow you. The second thing that I want to say is, if you if you are as a leader, if you're not willing to also be a manager, then you're not a good leader, because a leader sees the big picture. Managers have to so leaders see the big picture, but they also know the goal that they're trying to get to. Managers only know that particular thing that they are in charge of. And so as a leader, you have to look from the manager's standpoint to see what problems their subordinates might also have. So a leader must be a manager. Managers must be leaders. And so I don't want our listeners to think that if you're a manager, you don't have to see the big picture.
Yes.
You also have to see the big picture because every piece of the puzzle needs to fit together to go in the proper direction. And so, as the leader, you have to look from a managerial standpoint to make sure that all the pieces align properly so that you can get everyone in the proper direction.
Excellent point. As we lead out of here today, we were talking about adaptive leadership and the power that it has. And everything that has power also has some downsides to it. And as Dr. Howell shared many of the downsides, I did share some as well. And we really discussed this topic. But what I want to leave with today is the most important thing in leadership is to be able to lead yourself. And that is what makes you an effective leader, whether you're leading in the adaptive leadership style, the empathetic leadership style, the laissez-faire leadership style, whatever style you're leading in, the transformative leadership style, anyone you're leading in, the ability to lead yourself is the most important aspect of leadership. So whether we hold an executive position, a middle manager position, a team leader position, wherever we are, let us strive to deepen our sense of self-awareness, which will help us to be a better leader. That's what I want to lead us with, leave us with today. My name is Dr. Janice. If you have not heard from the beginning, I am a life strategist leadership consultant. I'm also a licensed pastoral counselor and behind the scenes a temperament counselor as well. With me today was Dr. Siegfried Howell, also a certified relationship consultant. He's also a leadership consultant, and he is also a prolific writer. He has over 20 books on Amazon. And you're going to want to go there and search for it. I have two books on Amazon myself. This is one, Anchored by Purpose, and the other one is right behind me. They're called Moments in Time. If you have not read any of our books, you can go right over to Amazon and take a look at them and be able to see. Dr. Howell's book, which is called The 12P Model to Success, is also now in audiobooks. And if you go to his profile, you will see where you can get a code to be one of the first ones to listen to his audiobooks. Excellent way to start off, to be giving back, talking about adaptive leadership, to be able to give back to someone who wants to listen, the 12P model to success. Dr. Howell, thank you so much for this enlightening session today. We will be back here next Friday for another session. We said an adaptive leadership leader, amongst everything that they do, is to be able to pause,
Mhm.
assess, reflect, pivot, and do these things and then come back around. We know we weren't here for the last 7 weeks because we had to pause because of circumstances. We had to pivot, we had to change, we had to do many things. But we are back here, and we thank you so much for joining us for another Lunch and Learn. You have a wonderful rest of your weekend and take good care. Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.